When I first started flying lessons, I was just turning 16. I did it early in the morning between 6 and 7 o'clock in the summertime. As soon as I got my 40 hours in, I got my license. This is 75 Romeo right north of Airman's Point. This November, requested permission to taxi for a west departure of it. Advise ready west. Thank you very much.
Ed is genuine, authentic, 100% Alaskan. He's a person that you can shake his hand and you know that agreement is solid gold.
He has built philanthropic infrastructure in the state of Alaska, and that's a hard thing to do.
Would Ed have chosen to be a banker in life? Probably not. I mean, his love is the humanities, but he has a huge sense of duty. And when duty called, he came to take over his dad's place and run the bank, and did it very well.
And I think that running the bank was crucial to how he saw to run the foundation. That the foundation was not just a benevolent overlord. The foundation was there to help people help themselves.
I've told a couple of governors, if Ed ever calls you, take his call, because he never wants anything for himself. It's always for the good of Alaska.
I've run too many meetings as a chairman of the board of this, chairman of the board of that, and I know how to run meetings, but I don't like to necessarily be in the limelight continuously. Just leave me alone, you know.
One of the things that's great about Ed is even though he's an introvert, he shows up. He makes things happen. He does what he needs to do.
Our fish on the board here and fillet it, and then I can put the fillet in the cryback bags.
He's authentic and he's generous and he's giving. He is so passionate and cares about the state so much that he's like, well, I need to get in there and help out.
Ed is doing it for the state. And I do think that's what he thinks about in the middle of the night is what could he do to make it better.
This meeting for salmon, I get over at Golden Horn or down Sitka, and I bring back H&G head and gutted, and then I can fillet it here and what have you.
Dad was president and chairman of the board of National Bank of Alaska until the sale of the bank July 14th, 2000. And then Elmer passed away on December 1st, 2000. And that's when Ed took over as chairman of the Rasmuson Foundation board. Dad did serve on many boards. The Alaska Board of Regents for the University of Alaska, the Sheldon Jackson College, and APU, Alaska Pacific University. I think he's the only guy that has served on all three boards.
Build a special place out here for smoking. I can make strips, I can smoke, and I've got the fans, and it's, it smells very smoky in here, obviously.
But I think his most important contribution, his legacy, is going to be how he's built the culture of philanthropy in Alaska. And it helps set the example for all Alaskans, not just those, with means, but everyone, to be more engaged in giving back.
There was a period of time when the number of people who were homeless became very apparent in the city. And he would drive downtown every day and come into the office and say, I cannot stand to see this in our city. We have to be able to do better. Someone's got to help these people.
We have many different programs here. And so we looked at the data, and what we found was that there had been a pretty dramatic increase in the number of people experiencing homelessness and using Brother Francis shelter.
And I remember saying, well, Ed, you're totally right, but this isn't something we can just make a grant for. If you really want to solve this, this is going to be years and years and years of work. We're going to need to get partners. We're going to need to have other people buy into this.
I'm the largest single provider of homes in Alaska, and Ed and I had had several conversations about the homeless issue in Anchorage, Alaska. I pledged $10 million, which matched the Rasmuson grant, and Ed brought in 2 other participants as well, which gave us a total of $40 million. That's a good start.
It was Ed who said, I can't see this, do something about it.
Ed is a doer. I would join Ed in almost anything because he knows how to get things done.
I was born in Texas, but we moved here in 1943 when I was a little over 2 years old. I can remember being picked up at the railroad station by my aunt and uncle. That was Bob and Evangeline Atwood.
As far back as I can remember, I've known Ed. It was a small town back then. Town pretty well ended at 16th Avenue. The Rasmuson house was 2 doors down from ours. Very close neighbors, and we learned how to play chess together. Played chess with his father. His father was a tough taskmaster. People have said to me, to know and appreciate Ed, you have to know Elmer, and I think there's a lot to that. Elmer was a very moral, very strong-minded person. I think a brilliant businessman. Elmer was very difficult to please. He was easily displeased, and if you were the one that caused the displeasure, you're going to hear about it. And the amount of times you got caught up in that situation was directly proportional to the amount of time you were around him, and Ed was around him a lot.
It was not a pleasant experience growing up in Elmer's household. On the other hand, I think he loved us kids very much, and he tried to raise my sisters and myself in a manner that they would be self-reliant and take part in the society and take a lot of responsibility. Well, today, all of us have done it.
Mom was the rock of everything, and very much loved by their children.
Lyle Rasmussen, she was a very close friend of my mother's. She was a lovely lady.
She died when I was 19. And it was a very traumatic experience for myself and for my sisters. I don't think we ever really got over it.
And at that time, you could just say, well, Lord, why take a beautiful person who's very well accepted in the community and loved by many, many people in our community away from us? And you go to the Bible, and the Bible says, that happens. There's no such thing as a perfect existence. No such thing as a perfect place to live. Everything's a compromise.
In the early 90s, Ed, through the bank, had made a donation to preserve film through the archives in the Rasmuson Library. So I was hired as a student to start on that project. I was struggling because we didn't have the proper storage, and I didn't realize then that they actually had quite an attachment to film, Alaska history also. And I explained the problem that we had, that we didn't have vaults, and vaults are the key to being able to preserve film. Then magically one day, he sent a check for what we needed to accomplish. And we were able to build 2 film vaults. It was fantastic. Until we had the vaults, we just had a collection of old film. As soon as we had the vaults, we were an archive, and it has created a legacy that 100 years from now, people are going to see things and learn things from the film. I sure hope they remember who Ed and Catherine were, because they were the ones that put it together, and they were the ones that saved this for everyone else.
I fell in love with Ed right at the beginning because he's loyal, and he was kind, and he was generous to anybody, whether it was a dog or the president of a company. He treated everybody equally. Ed and I got married on 9/11, 1969. Our rehearsal dinner was on September 10th, which was the day of the oil lease sale. There was not a room to be had in all of Anchorage. Every person from all over the United States that had to do with oil and finances was there.
Anchorage is Alaska's boomtown. 121,000 people, nearly half the state's population, live in this area.
Ed was the manager of the Spenard branch at that time. You couldn't keep any of your employees. They were all running off to the North Slope. They were getting fantastic wages, and it was just a new country. They were building everywhere. Streets were torn up and people were coming. It was actually very exciting because the oil men that they sent and their wives and their families came as an adventure. And what I liked about them is that they came to Anchorage and said, what can I do? So we grew with their energy.
Six, 7 minutes flying time, I can be away from Anchorage in a very rural setting. Dad bought the original lot, or actually squatted on it, in 1944. And we owned 5.5 acres, and when we got statehood, we were allowed to buy the lot. Built this new cabin in 1991. All the features at home here. Here's what the old cabin looked like. That's Dad. Memories of my father and mother taking us over in a small aircraft back in the 40s. And so we'd go here almost every weekend with Mom and Dad and my 2 sisters. We just enjoyed the heck out of it. And the memories of raising my children here, my 3 children, and they just loved it over here. I own another property on the other side there that someday I'll give to my kids. Whoever stays in Alaska gets it. They're having their fun. Ha! Jeez. Want to be young again, huh?
He plays a mean game of dominoes, of cards, poker. He's very competitive. Is a Rasmuson not competitive? But Ed is inordinately kind. I think that's what I always remember as a child, how very kind he is. And he had lots of friends, and he had lots of friends from all different areas and walks of life.
I'm Tom Nicewonder, next door neighbor for many years. We raised our kids together and went through all the trials and tribulations of trying to get them launched. One of the very interesting pieces of our relationship is that here's this conservative Republican banker and a former Peace Corps volunteer. And in fact, Ed has called me his token liberal. And he's actually one of my closest male friends. Ed, he takes a larger view of life, compassion for others, interest in others, taking care of other folks, irregardless of politics.
There's about 60 acres over by the Campbell Creek drainage that a private family had, and they needed money to convert it into a park. Diane Kaplan, my dad and I went and visited it. So we're walking down there with our boots, and I said, "Dad, this is prime real estate. This is bluff views." My dad's like, "You know what, Natasha? Sometimes you just have to put on your liberal hat." And I remember staring at him going, "Liberal hat? You own a liberal hat?" And he's like, "Well, yes, sometimes we have to put on your liberal hat. So think about this being available for all the people." And that's exactly what we did. And now it's a walking path with bird viewing platforms, and it's beautiful.
We actually ran every morning. At 6 o'clock in the morning, rain or shine, and winter or summer. I think we stopped at about 5 below because our eyelashes would start to freeze up. We'd be running, and that guy would not run over a penny. He'd stop. He said, "Wait a minute, there's a penny on the ground."
The roots of the foundation and the family wealth came from Alaska, and it came basically from a hard-working Swedish immigrant that started a little bank.
The National Bank of Alaska actually started as the Bank of Alaska in Skagway. My great-grandfather, E.A. Rasmuson, took over the bank in 1915. And he ran it until his death in 1949. And then my grandfather, Elmer Rasmussen, ran it for many, many years. And then my father took over in 1985 and grew the bank into the largest financial institution in Alaska.
That was a watch that was given to me by the city of Wrangell when I left Wrangell in 1967. And I was very fond of it, and it's broken a number of times. I had it repaired, but I've got very fond memories of my time in Wrangell in southeastern Alaska. Looking back in those days, it was exciting to be in the Wrangells of the world. My God, the whole world was my oyster. So I'd go out on tugboats, and I'd go out on hauling log rafts and identifying the types of equipment they were used, so when they came in to run a finance company, I understood what they were trying to do. Oh, I learned how to deer hunt and to fish, and did a lot of flying. I did a lot of traveling from Ketchikan to Barrow. As a result, later on, I had a pretty good handle on what was happening in our state.
Elmer was very good at putting all the pieces together, but Ed is the one who I think gave the humanity to the bank. He brought in women as vice presidents. He put women on the board. He brought in health care for all the employees. And Elmer cared about every employee and cared about his customers, but more as the patron does, looking after everybody who works for him. Ed cared for them as, "Hey, you're my partner, and we got to work this out together." That way of running the bank was crucial to how he saw to run the foundation. And Ed in particular was about how can the foundation help others fulfill their dreams.
I've never had a business relationship with Ed, but I asked him about how he made banking decisions. And he said, what you really invest in is people.
I hunted sheep since I was 12 years old, and I quit hunting sheep when I was 66, 67 years of age. But I hunted sheep almost every year. It's a tough hunt, but it's exhilarating to be climb the mountains. And I've hunted in Afghanistan, I've hunted in Mongolia, and I've hunted in Canada and Mexico and Alaska, and there's nothing like it. There's hunting and there's sheep hunting.
Elmer, he was at his best when he could teach us how to hunt and to fish. And I think Ed feels the same way, that when he is out in the woods, he's doing, first of all, what comes naturally to him, and he knows how to do everything from light a fire to string a fishing lure to skin a sheep. And he's happy to impart that knowledge with somebody else, to anybody else, and especially to the kids.
There was a rite of passage that when you turned 13, you got to go duck hunting with my dad. And so my father and my grandfather and I all went over to the duck flats to hunt together. And I had been training, and my dad had been teaching me to shoot, and I could shoot that target. I was getting really good. Those tin cans flew off. But when I raised the rifle to shoot a duck, I couldn't pull the trigger. And my dad was very patient with me, and finally he said, "That's okay. You don't have to shoot." And that was especially wonderful because my grandfather was there, and he sort of had this line where, "This is what's expected of you, and you better do it." And my dad said, "No." My dad said, "I'm gonna support you."
Alaska's been very transient, and people come and then they leave, and they might take pieces or histories with them that might disappear from Alaska and never find their way back. And I think there's something core about that that really bothers him. We're in the Art of the North galleries of the Anchorage Museum. I will probably never forget those early conversations I had with Ed about building a new wing to the museum, and he was, steadfast about what it was for, that these were going to be dedicated to the art of Alaska.
He just said, enough is enough. We've got these great Alaskan masters, these Sidney Lawrences or these Fred Makatons. We got to be showing these works of theirs that are not being shown, and they're sitting in the basement of the Anchorage Museum, and we don't have enough space, and I want to change that so that Alaskans can enjoy them. He moved very quickly, gathered best engineers, gathered the architects. That was 100% Ed.
I always talk about this as an aspirational space because for us as a museum, they're grand galleries, they're beautiful spaces.
The good news is that we built an addition that will take care of the paintings for the near future as well as in the far future. And that's my swan song.
I'm very pleased to be able to finally present these Papal Benemerenti medals to Ed and Kathy Rasmuson.
There's all kinds of ways of giving back. Now I look back and see what we've done, and I'm very proud of it.
Their commitment and their support over many years to the Catholic Church and to so many individuals in need within Anchorage and our state of Alaska is well known and greatly appreciated by all.
Knowing that we have tried to be a good stewards of our state and try to help develop a better place for everyone to live. That to me is a lasting legacy. There we go. No pain, no strain, huh?